Let me tell you what happens when 100 fluffy white dogs crash headfirst into suburban America's most dangerous predator, the HOA board president with a power complex. People think police work is all sirens and shootouts. That's what they show on TV. But 15 years on the force taught me the real threat isn't the guy with the gun. It's the woman with the clipboard, a list of regulations, and absolutely nothing better to do with her time. My name is Dave Spencer. 43 years old, police lieutenant, African American, dog lover, and until 3 months ago, just another anonymous homeowner in the prestigious Oakwood Heights community. That's when I became the neighborhood's public enemy number one. It started, like all epic disasters do, with good intentions. Our K-9 training facility had received a shipment of 100 Samoyed puppies from a specialized breeding program. The department had invested in them as potential police dogs, their intelligence, stamina, and thick coat theoretically making them suitable for our harsh winters. Unfortunately, whoever signed that purchase order clearly hadn't done their research. Samoyeds might look like majestic wolves, but they have the temperament of furry stand-up comedians. After 6 weeks of training, the head of the K-9 unit declared them spectacularly useless for police work. "They're too damn friendly," Captain Rodriguez complained during our staff meeting. "We had one corner a suspect yesterday, and it just licked his face and rolled over for belly rubs." The department was stuck. 100 high-energy, purebred dogs with nowhere to go. The local shelters couldn't handle that influx. Returning them to the breeder would mean most would be euthanized. "We need temporary housing while we find them permanent homes," the captain said. "Any volunteers?" The room went silent. Nobody wanted to admit they didn't have the space or means to help. I shouldn't have raised my hand. The smart move would have been to stare intently at my coffee, like everyone else. But I'd inherited my grandfather's property a year earlier. 5 acres on the edge of Oakwood Heights, with a fully outfitted dog training area from the previous owner, who'd been a professional handler. "I've got space," I heard myself say. Training pens, kennels, the works. Previous owner left it all behind. The relief on Rodriguez's face was immediate. "Spencer, you're a lifesaver, just for a few weeks until we can partner with that service. Dog organization." "No problem, Cap. How many are we talking about?" "Just 100. I choked on my coffee. 100? Give or take, they'll start arriving tomorrow. And that, friends, is how I found myself the unexpected foster parent to a small army of fluffy white dogs who seemed to consider police work beneath their dignity, but were absolutely committed to the art of joyful chaos. The first confrontation happened precisely 3 days after the Samoyed invasion began. I was in the backyard, trying to establish some semblance of order among the excitable masses, when I heard the unmistakable sound of throat clearing designed specifically to convey disapproval. Standing at my fence was Claudia Reynolds, president of the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association. Picture a 60-something woman with hair the color and consistency of steel wool, permanently pursed lips, and the warm demeanor of a tax auditor who just found a suspicious deduction. "Mr. Spencer," she said, making my name sound like an accusation. "What exactly is going on here?" Behind me, about 30 Samoyeds were engaged in what I can only describe as a choreographed display of synchronized foolishness, running, jumping, play fighting, and occasionally stopping to howl in perfect harmony. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Reynolds. I'm temporarily housing these dogs for the police department." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "Are you aware of Section 7.4.2 of the Oakwood Heights Covenant, which restricts pet ownership to 2 animals per household?" "These aren't pets," I explained. "They're police property. I'm just providing space while we—" "They appear to be dogs, Mr. Spencer. Numerous dogs, on residential property. It's a temporary situation. They're being assessed for service dogs. Training." She held up a manicured hand. The covenant makes no distinction for temporary violations or the occupation of the animals in question. One of the Samoyeds, sensing tension, trotted over and offered Claudia his most winning smile, complete with lolling tongue and bright eyes. She recoiled as though he'd bared his fangs. "I'll be bringing this matter to the board's immediate attention," she announced, backing away from the fence. "Expect formal notification of violations shortly." As she marched away, the Samoyed looked up at me with an expression that clearly said, "What's her problem?" "Politics, buddy," I told him, scratching behind his ears. "Everyone's got 'em. I didn't." Realize then that I'd just met the opening salvo in what would become the Great Samoyed War of Oakwood Heights. The formal notification arrived the next morning. A crisp envelope containing a violation notice that made my mortgage agreement look like light reading. The gist was simple. I was in violation of multiple HOA covenants, most significantly the pet restriction policy. The board was imposing a fine of $1,000 per animal per day until the violation was remedied. $100,000. Daily. I called the HOA office immediately. "This has to be a mistake," I said when Claudia came on the line. "There's no mistake, Mr. Spencer," she replied with the satisfaction of someone who'd just dealt a royal flush. "The board held an emergency session last night and voted unanimously. $100,000 a day is extortion, not a fine. Perhaps you should have considered that before bringing a small zoo into our residential community." "These are service dogs in training," I lied, upgrading their status. "That makes them working animals, not pets. There are ADA considerations." "Your property is not zoned for a commercial training facility," she countered smoothly. "That would be a separate violation, should you choose to pursue that line of argument." I took a deep breath, channeling the de-escalation techniques from my police training. "Look, Mrs. Reynolds, this is a temporary situation. The department is actively finding placements. The covenant doesn't recognize temporary violations, as I explained yesterday. The fines begin accruing today." After hanging up, I immediately called Captain Rodriguez. $100,000 a day?" he exclaimed. "That's insane." "Tell me about it. How soon can we relocate these dogs?" There was an uncomfortable pause. "That's why I was about to call you. The service dog organization needs another 3 weeks to prepare their facility. Can you hold out?" I did some quick math. 3 weeks at $100,000 per day would total over $2 million. "Cap, I can't afford these fines. They'll take my house. Maybe we can spread the dogs around. Ask other officers. Most of the force lives in apartments or has other dogs that might not mix well," I reminded him. "That's why I'm stuck with the whole fluffy army." Rodriguez sighed heavily. "I'll talk to legal, see what we can do. In the meantime, just hold the line, Spencer." Holding the line would have been easier if I hadn't come home that evening to find a TV news van parked outside my house. A perky reporter approached as I pulled into my driveway. "Lieutenant Spencer? Dana Martinez from Channel 8 News. We received an anonymous tip about 100 police dogs being housed illegally in a residential neighborhood. Care to comment?" I glanced toward Claudia's house down the street, where she stood watching from her perfectly manicured lawn, arms folded in triumph. Game on, I thought. Here's what most people don't understand about HOAs. They operate on intimidation. Most residents roll over at the first citation because fighting back seems too complicated. The boards count on that compliance. But they'd never faced someone like me, a cop who'd spent his career dealing with actual intimidation tactics from people considerably more dangerous than suburban housewives with rule books. My first countermove was simple. I invited Dana Martinez and her camera crew into my backyard for a full tour. "As you can see," I explained as we waded through a sea of friendly white dogs, "these are Samoyeds being trained as service animals for people with visual impairments and mobility issues. The police department acquired them through a special program, and I'm donating my property as temporary housing until their permanent training facility is ready." It wasn't entirely accurate, but we were indeed exploring service work as an option for them. "And the HOA is fining you $100,000 daily for this charitable work?" Dana asked, right on cue. "Unfortunately, yes. Despite the temporary nature of the arrangement and the fact that these dogs will eventually help people with disabilities." Dana looked appropriately shocked as a particularly photogenic Samoyed puppy snuggled against her leg. "That seems excessive for a temporary situation that's, helping the community." I shrugged helplessly. "I'm just trying to do the right thing here." The segment aired that evening during prime time. By morning, Chart Save the Samoyeds was trending locally on social media, and my voicemail was full of messages from dog lovers offering support. The HOA's response came swiftly. At 7 a.m. I found Claudia at my door, flanked by two other board members, Patricia Wilson, a severe-looking woman with a permanent scowl, and Margaret Chen, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Your media stunt changes nothing," Claudia announced. "In fact, the board has voted to add an additional fine for conducting commercial activities from a residential property, as you're clearly using these animals for publicity." "I'm not making any money here," I pointed out. Patricia thrust a new violation notice at me. Section 12.3 prohibits drawing unusual traffic or attention to a residential property. Your news appearance violated that provision. I glanced at the new fine, $5,000 per day. "So now we're at $105,000 daily," I said. "And accruing," Claudia confirmed with a thin smile. "Perhaps now you'll reconsider your position." "Actually," I replied, "I'm considering several positions. Most of them would require a yoga instructor to demonstrate." Margaret Chen stifled what might have been a laugh, earning a sharp look from Claudia. After they left, I called the department's legal counsel, who promised to look into options but warned that HOA disputes were notoriously difficult to fight. "These covenants are essentially private contracts you agreed to when purchasing the property," she explained. "Courts tend to defer to HOAs, unless their actions are egregiously discriminatory or contrary to public policy. Fining me over $2 million for helping dogs isn't egregious? It's excessive, certainly, but they can argue they're just enforcing agreed-upon rules." I was about to respond when I heard a commotion outside. Looking through my window, I saw something unexpected. About 20 people with homemade signs gathered at the end of my driveway, chanting, "Save the Samoyeds!" The local news had returned too, this time with two vans. My phone rang. It was Rodriguez. "Spencer, are you watching the news? You've gone viral." I was watching a live feed of my own house. "So I see. The chief wants a briefing. This is turning into a PR situation." That was an understatement. By noon, the crowd had grown to nearly 100 people. Someone had set up a refreshment table. Another group was collecting signatures for a petition. 3 different news stations were conducting interviews. And the Samoyeds? They were loving every minute of it, basking in the attention as people took turns petting them through the fence. Claudia and her HOA enforcers arrived around 1 p.m., looking like they'd bitten into something sour. "This gathering is unauthorized," she announced to nobody in particular. "These people are trespassing on HOA common areas." One of the protesters, a middle-aged woman with a Doggy Defender t-shirt, turned to face her. "Actually, we checked the county records. This sidewalk is public property, not HOA land." Claudia's face flushed. "The noise ordinance doesn't apply until after 10 p.m., completed a man holding a "Honk for Huskies" sign, clearly unclear on the breed in question, but his heart was in the right place. As Claudia sputtered, a sleek black SUV pulled up, and a man in an expensive suit emerged, followed by aides carrying clipboards. The universal signal of officialdom. "Lieutenant Spencer?" he called, walking through the parted crowd. I stepped forward. "That's me." He extended his hand. "Michael Harrington, Governor's Office of Community Relations. The governor saw your story this morning and sent me to offer Assistance. Claudia practically materialized at his side. Mr. Harrington, I'm Claudia Reynolds, president of the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association. This situation involves private covenant enforcement, not state matters. Harrington gave her a politician's smile. All teeth, no warmth. Ms. Reynolds, when a decorated police officer is being penalized for assisting with a program that helps both animals and people with disabilities, it becomes a matter of public interest. The governor is particularly concerned about the significant financial penalties being imposed. The covenant clearly states, "Yes, I've reviewed your covenant," he interrupted smoothly. "I've also consulted with the state attorney general's office about certain provisions that may conflict with state law regarding service animals and reasonable accommodations." For the first time since I'd met her, Claudia Reynolds looked uncertain. "Perhaps," Harrington continued, "we could discuss this somewhere more private? The governor is hoping for an amicable resolution." As they moved toward my house, I caught a glimpse of Patricia Wilson's face. She wasn't just angry, she was furious, and something in her expression set off my cop instincts. I should have paid closer attention to that warning sign. The meeting inside my living room was tense but productive. Harrington made it clear that while the governor respected HOA authority, the optics of punishing someone for helping potential service animals were problematic. He suggested a 30-day waiver of the pet restriction covenant to allow time for proper relocation. Claudia, facing potential scrutiny from the state government, reluctantly agreed. Patricia remained silent throughout, which should have concerned me more than it did. After they left, Harrington lingered. "The governor would like to visit tomorrow," he said. "This kind of community police partnership is exactly the positive story his office wants to highlight." "It's really not that big a deal," I protested. "I'm just providing space." "Sometimes, Lieutenant, the simplest acts of service make the best political photo opportunities." He wasn't wrong about that. By evening, the crowd outside had dispersed, but social media was ablaze with the story of the Samoyeds standoff. Local businesses had started fundraisers to help cover any remaining fines. A dog food company had pledged a month's supply of premium kibble. For the moment, it seemed like a victory. I should have remembered that in every conflict, the most dangerous moment comes just when you think you've won. I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound every cop dreads: breaking glass. Then I smelled it. Smoke. I was out of bed and moving before conscious thought kicked in, grabbing my phone and gun from the nightstand. Downstairs, the living room was clear, but I could see an orange glow through the windows facing the backyard. The dog kennels were on fire. I called 911 as I raced outside, where I found a scene from a nightmare. The main kennel building was engulfed in flames, and terrified Samoyeds were running in all directions across the yard. Thankfully, I'd left most of them in the outdoor enclosures due to the warm weather, but at least 20 had been sleeping in the kennel building. I could hear their panicked barking from inside. Without hesitation, I ran toward the burning structure. The heat was intense, the smoke choking, but I managed to kick open the side door. Samoyeds streamed past me, coughing, and singed but alive. I was checking the last cages when a support beam cracked overhead. I barely had time to register the danger before something slammed into me from behind, driving me forward as the beam crashed down where I'd been standing. It was one of the dogs, a large male who'd circled back and knocked me clear of the falling debris. His white coat was gray with soot, but his eyes were clear and intent. He nudged me toward the exit as the building groaned around us. We made it outside just as the fire department arrived. I collapsed on the lawn, the dog pressing against me as if making sure I was okay. As paramedics checked me for injuries, I scanned the gathered crowd of neighbors in robes and pajamas. Through the chaos, I spotted Patricia Wilson standing slightly apart, watching not with shock or concern, but with grim satisfaction. Our eyes met across the lawn. She didn't look away, didn't pretend. Just held my gaze with cold defiance, before turning and walking back toward her house. Message received. The fire investigation was swift and conclusive. Arson. The perpetrator had broken a window, poured accelerant, and lit a match. Professional, deliberate, targeted, but proving who ordered it would be another matter entirely. By morning, the kennel building was a charred skeleton. The training yard was partially damaged. Miraculously, all the dogs had survived, though several had minor burns and smoke inhalation. Local vets had volunteered emergency services. Neighbors I'd never even met offered space in their garages and backyards for displaced Samoyeds. The governor, true to his word, arrived midday, cameras in tow, to survey the damage and pledge state resources to apprehend those responsible. This was not just an attack on property, he declared to the assembled press. This was an attack on our community's values, on compassion, service, and the special bond between humans and animals. He presented me with a commendation for rushing into the burning building, making no mention of the fact that the dog had actually saved me, not the other way around. Politics requires clear narratives, I suppose. What the cameras didn't capture was our private conversation afterward. "Lieutenant," the governor said quietly, once we were alone, "my office has received some concerning information about the HOA leadership here." "Sir?" "Financial irregularities, selective enforcement patterns, potential discriminatory practices." He held my gaze. "Would it surprise you to learn that you're the only black homeowner who's received significant fines in the past 5 years, despite multiple comparable violations by others?" It didn't surprise me. I'd suspected as much, but had chosen to focus on the immediate issue rather than potential discrimination claims. "The state attorney general is opening a quiet investigation," he continued. "We'd appreciate your discretion for now." I nodded, thinking of Patricia's cold stare across my burning yard. "What about the arson, sir?" "Local police are leading that investigation, but state resources are available if needed." He paused. "Do you have suspicions?" "Nothing concrete. Enough to share yet." That was true, technically. I had suspicions but no proof, and a cop knows better than anyone the danger of accusations without evidence. But I also knew that sometimes the most damning evidence comes from unexpected places. 2 days after the fire, I received an email from an unfamiliar address, mchenoakwoodcpa.com. Margaret Chen, the uncomfortable-looking HOA board member. The message was brief. "Security footage from my home office. Thought you should see this." Attached was a video file. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. on the night of the fire. The grainy night vision footage showed a corner of my property and a figure moving stealthily along the fence line toward the kennels. The image quality was poor, but when the figure turned, the streetlight caught their face. Patricia Wilson. In her hand was what appeared to be a gas can. I immediately called Detective Ramirez, who was leading the arson investigation. Within hours, a search warrant was executed at Patricia's home, where they found shoes with accelerant residue and burn patterns matching those at the scene. She was arrested that afternoon. The HOA board, in damage control mode, issued a statement, distancing themselves from Patricia's alleged individual actions and extending deepest regrets for the incident. Claudia Reynolds resigned the following day. With the immediate threat neutralized, I could focus on the dogs again. The service dog organization, spurred by the publicity, accelerated their preparations and began taking Samoyeds in groups of 10. Local families, touched by the story, submitted applications to adopt the others. The governor, never one to miss a political opportunity, announced a state initiative for Service Dogs for Heroes, a program training rescue animals to assist veterans and first responders with PTSD. And then came the most unexpected development of all. 1 month after the fire, I received an invitation to attend a city council meeting. The agenda included a special recognition for community heroes and the unveiling of plans for a new public sculpture. I assumed the recognition was just another political photo op, but when I arrived, I found something more significant. The council chambers were packed with people I'd come to know over the past weeks. Neighbors who'd helped house displaced dogs, volunteers who'd rebuilt fences, veterans interested in the service dog program. The mayor called me to the podium, where I was presented with a key to the city, a purely symbolic gesture, but touching nonetheless. "Lieutenant Spencer," the mayor said, "your actions have inspired our community in ways that extend far beyond the 100 dogs you rescued. You've shown us the power of standing firm against intimidation, of compassion in the face of cruelty, and of building bridges instead of walls." The crowd applauded as he unveiled an artist's rendering of the proposed sculpture, a police officer standing alongside a Samoyed, to be installed in the park adjacent to City Hall. "This monument," the mayor continued, "will serve as a permanent reminder that our community values service, courage, and the special bond between humans and their animal companions." It was overwhelming, honestly. All I'd done was offer space for some homeless dogs. I hadn't expected to become a symbol of anything. As the ceremony concluded, a familiar face approached, the large male Samoyed, who'd knocked me clear of the falling beam during the fire. He was accompanied by a trainer from the service dog organization. "This is Valor," the trainer said. "He's completed his initial assessment with flying colors. His instincts for danger and protective behavior are extraordinary." The dog, Valor, pressed against my leg in greeting. "We think he'd make an excellent PTSD service dog," the trainer continued. "Given your experience with the fire and your role in saving these dogs, we wondered if you might consider being his handler." I looked down at Valor, who gazed back, with intelligent eyes that seemed to contain both wisdom and mischief. "I'm not a veteran," I said, "or dealing with PTSD. The program isn't exclusively for veterans," she explained. "First responders qualify too, and sometimes trauma doesn't announce itself immediately." She wasn't wrong about that. I'd been having dreams about the fire, about not making it out in time. Nothing debilitating, but noticeable. Valor nudged my hand, as if making his own case. "We would provide all the training, of course," the trainer added. "He'd be officially certified, which would exempt him from any HOA restrictions." I couldn't help but laugh at that last part. I think the HOA and I have reached an understanding. Indeed we had. The new board, formed after Claudia's resignation, had voted to modify several covenant provisions, including the pet restriction policy. They'd also issued a formal apology for the overzealous enforcement actions of the previous leadership. The state attorney general's investigation was proceeding quietly, with indications of potentially serious financial improprieties. Beyond the discriminatory enforcement practices, Patricia Wilson remained in custody, having been denied bail due to the violent nature of her crime and evidence suggesting she might have been involved in other similar incidents throughout the county. As for the property damage, insurance covered most of it, and community donations handled the rest. The rebuilt training yard was actually better than the original, with improved features for canine agility and comfort. "So," the trainer prompted, "what do you say about Valor?" The dog tilted, his head expectantly. Sometimes life takes strange detours. I'd gone from anonymous homeowner to community symbol in less than 3 months, all because I'd said yes to an impossible request to house 100 dogs. "I say," I replied, scratching Valor behind the ears, "that we've already saved each other once. Might as well make it official." 2 weeks later, when the governor unveiled the completed sculpture in the park, a bronze officer and Samoyed standing vigilant together, Valor sat beside me in his official service vest, the very picture of canine dignity. Well, mostly dignity. He did try to lick the bronze dog's face, much to the delight of the assembled crowd. Because some things never change. Samoyeds make terrible police dogs, but excellent heroes. And sometimes, The most unexpected challenges lead to the most meaningful rewards. As for the HOA, let's just say Oakwood Heights has entered a new era of reasonable governance, community engagement, and a distinct appreciation for fluffy white dogs. Valor and I make sure of it.